In this installment of Holy Smoke, I Had a Stroke, Jeff Erickson, am going to talk about my doctor's appointments. So I've had 2.5 doctor's appointments since my stroke. By this time, I should have had three, but the half is actually lab visits, and I should have had 3.5 really. So the first doctor's visit was really sort of, I was in a fog, and I had was only 7 days 7 days after I was released from the hospital. So 8 days after my stroke, and I met with my primary care physician, and really what we talked a lot about is his sort of theory of the crime, as I like to call it. So why this happened to me under the circumstances. So particularly because I didn't have any of the pre-existing risk factors that often suggest that I was a candidate for a stroke, particularly one as bad as the one that I had, even though I continue to talk about how grateful I am that I am doing extremely well. And I'll talk a little bit more about what's going on as my symptoms are evolving. So one of the big things that I did before going into the appointment was to listen to this book called Healing the Broken Brain. It is a doctor and his brother who had a stroke. They talk a ton about conditions after stroke. They interview experts. And so I went in armed with a lot of statistics that gave me the ability to really talk intelligently about stroke with my doctor. So I listened to that. I was out of work. And so I was able to really focus on listening to this book. In fact, normally I listen to books at a high speed. I slowed this down so that my brain, that was still in shock, could listen to this book, Healing the Broken Brain. I'm going to put a link in below, or wherever links go. I'm pretty new to this. Put a link in. So if you want to listen to the book, if a loved one has had a stroke, or if you've had a stroke and you're here, you want to listen to this book, the link that I'm going to provide should be able to give you a free listen to a book. I'll figure that out. It's probably going to end up being through Audible. But I listen to a ton of healthcare books and business books through Audible, and I think that it's a great way, particularly if you're on a time crunch, to go to a doctor's visit, that you can learn about what symptoms you're having and so forth. So the 2.5 doctor's visits, the next doctor visit was actually going in for lab work to kind of assess the situation prior to meeting with my doctor 1 month after my stroke. As of today, I believe we're at 57 days since my stroke. So it's actually March 26th, I believe. Yes. Hey, it's starting to work. So that's good. So I went in to have lab work done and determine how I was doing on the 35 days between my first doctor's visit, which was really about calming me down, reducing my terror level, which was quite high. And there are some alarming statistics that I heard in the book Healing the Broken Brain that made me even more terrified. Particularly that 1 in 10 people who has a stroke has another stroke within the next 12 months. That's not terrible odds, but it's pretty terrifying considering how bad my experience with having my stroke was. So my doctor calmed me down, said we got to focus on this, we got to get your diet straight, we got to get your cholesterol down from wherever it was down to 70 in bad cholesterol. So the nature of the next appointment was really, all right, let's get these labs, and So I am here in the parking lot of my physician's office, my primary care physician, to get fasting blood work, to check on whether I have diabetes, what my cholesterol level is after roughly 1 month on statin. I'm also taking aspirin and Lexapro, which is a antidepressant. I'll talk about drugs in another episode, but for now, I'm really hoping the numbers are good. I have really been strict about my diet. I am what I would call a true carnivore. I eat a lot of red meat. I am a big aficionado of charcuterie. I make my own bacon. I have been really strict about my cholesterol intake, my fat intake. In another episode, I'll talk a little bit about how a dietitian talks about free cholesterol. I have some of that information, but the labs turned out great. So I took what I call a scorched earth policy towards dining. I cut out most fats. I stopped eating bacon, which is tough for me because I make my own bacon at home and it's delicious. I had one steak in 35 days. I'm a big carnivore. I eat a lot of red meat, and I really just tried to be as true to whatever I thought the diet was, the Mediterranean diet. I really ramped up wild caught salmon. I ramped up oats. I ramped up beans. I eat a lot of black beans, but I ramped up a lot more beans and so forth that have a lot of soluble fiber. I did a lot of overnight oats and was able to drop my cholesterol 50 points in 35 days. Pretty much all of my other numbers, A1C and so forth, diabetes and so forth, were not bad to begin with. My cholesterol wasn't even bad by comparison to my cholesterol was high normal. It was 203 while I was in the hospital being treated for the stroke, and it was about 203 back in June when I had my last doctor's appointment, annual checkup. So I've been seeing my primary care physician for about 2 years. I think he's a great physician, and he was actually quite contrite when I went in for the first appointment. He seemed almost surprised and saddened that somehow it had slipped by that I was at risk for a stroke. So his theory of the crime is that I fell into the bathtub before I had the stroke. MCV, or VCU Medical College, believes that I had the stroke and fell into the bathtub. My doctor, these two opinions, it's pretty subtle, but there's not a lot of research that suggests that a fall would have led to an ischemic stroke. So I'm gonna have to work that out with MCV Neurology. They pushed my appointment back 3 weeks, even though my release documentation said that I should be back to see neurology clinic within 3 weeks. It's now going to be closer to 2 months. It'll be over 60 days. It'll be 64 days since I have called in to their on-call doctor a few times, and in fact, I had decided to wait on some of the therapies that my primary care physician said that I should take advantage of until I went in to have my second or have my post-release neurology appointment, because I thought they would be able to give me some information on the post-stroke pain that I'm having, which is called it's called central pain syndrome. So essentially, on my entire left side, I am experiencing skin pain all over my body, which is focused mainly around my left eye and my left ear and some in this part of my face. But I also can't feel any temperature on my left side, which makes it interesting trying to decide to get into the shower because I use my left hand a lot. And I get in, and lo and behold, I made a bad choice, and the temperature had not equalized, so I got into a cold shower and it turned hot. So it's been a little bit of an adventure, kind of learning these, how these symptoms are continuing to evolve as my brain goes through this healing process, which the neuroplasticity associated with a stroke, you have increased neuroplasticity up to 6 months. That's usually when the most of your healing happens, as your brain builds new pathways. That hormonal change in the brain gives you the kind of the advantage of having this new kind of explosion of neuroplasticity. So what I've found in some of my research is this central pain syndrome that I've been experiencing. Roughly, at least according to a couple of articles I've read, only about 10% of people who have had a stroke have this pain. It can come from other brain injuries, but the stroke that I had and the location that I had it is now, this pain onset is usually between 50 and 60 days. So it's by I guess by all accounts, it's happening about when it should be happening. So it's probably that. It's probably this central pain syndrome, and it used to be called some other things. But so neurology appointment in a week, and then I have met with a nutritionist, but it was a lot to take in. So I'm actually breaking that down, and I'm going to try and make that into kind of more visual stuff. So that one may not be as much me standing talking head as much as me kind of going through my grocery list, or kind of going through some of the meal plans. The nutritionist stuff is really interesting to me, particularly because it sounds like all of the things that I was really scared of, like I'm not going to be able to have bacon, or I'm not going to be able to have, meat night with my friends, which, maybe I will. So she is much more focused on healthy fats and eating animal fats in a normal way, but surprisingly, it seems like carbohydrates are the things that are kind of linking fats and stroke and the plaque in the arteries. So I feel like I'm kind of getting to a point where I'm starting to understand what she means by some of these things, so that I can relay them in a way that makes sense, since I'm not a dietitian and I do consider myself a little bit more of a carnivore. So I was happy to hear top line that some of the things that I like to do before, I will still be able to do, even though I'm going to have to make some adaptations. Maybe, it won't be quite as bad as I thought when I was first meeting with my doctor. But I would encourage people to ask questions. Hit the like button if you thought this information or any of the information in the previous videos was useful. If you know somebody who's had a stroke, or you're caring for somebody who's had a stroke, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That way that this can get out to more people. I was talking to my sister about it, and she had a discussion with one of her coworkers. That coworker listened to what she was saying about the information here on the channel, and according to my sister, he talked to his mother later, a couple days later, maybe a week later, and it sounded like she was having a stroke, and he left work and went and picked her up and took her to the hospital. Turns out she was having a stroke, and he may have saved a significant portion of her brain. So it sounds like it wasn't completely no damage, but the fact that he heard what my sister was saying about what I've been talking about here pushed him to the point where he went and picked her up at work and took her to the hospital, and she's doing well. So please share this, hit like and or subscribe, and I'm going to talk a lot about what things to look out for in a stroke. I'm just going to do it one more time just so that everybody knows. The acronym is FAST, face, so facial symmetry. If your face doesn't look, if you're frowning on one side, drooping on one side, if your face is not symmetrical, call 911. Arms, do you have symmetrical ability to raise your arms? There's a thing called extinction. If somebody can raise their arms and then the arm drifts down, if they can't maintain symmetry, and if they have difficulty walking, arms, so face, arms. S is for speech, slurring speech, anything that if they begin to slur, if they sound confused while they're speaking, often if they can't understand speech or look more and more confused, then and they have these other symptoms, dial 911 if you think somebody you know is having a stroke or if you think you're having a stroke. When I was having my stroke, I didn't believe it and I tried to sleep it off, and there was a lot of damage as a result. FAST, face, arms, speech, time to call 911. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a great day. I look forward to seeing you all here. Again, if you have questions, please leave them. If you have comments, please leave them. If I've said anything that's inaccurate, if you're a healthcare professional, please leave a comment and I'll get back to you through PM, and I'd be happy to talk to professionals about helping or, you know, doing their own portion of this. You know, I'll set up the video and you can talk and we'll put it on this channel. So again, comments, hit like, hit share, send it directly to somebody you know who's dealing with the ramifications or aftermath of a stroke. Thank you again. Have a great day.